The New York Rangers season has definitely not gone to plan so far, as the team is currently on the outside looking into the playoffs, and things are just not going very good at all for this team. They are currently dealing with a pretty massive injury to, of course, Adam Fox, who sustained one on Saturday's game against Tampa. The team has just overall this season, though, not been playing very well. They've taken a pretty big step up offensively, of course, but have taken a pretty big drop off on the offensive side of things, as they, of course, have been one of the absolute worst teams offensively in the entire NHL. And I think with the way things have kind of gone this season, and with how much the Rangers decided to try and shake things up with the roster throughout last regular season, and of course, into this past offseason as well, I definitely think this team could and probably should look to continue on making, some kind of pretty big changes with this roster. Making some more pretty big trades, I definitely think could make a lot of sense for this team. It's obviously not a phenomenally built roster right now. There are definitely some pretty big kind of holes and problems with this roster, so making some more trades could make a lot of sense. And there are two players on this New York Rangers team currently, in Alexis Lafreniere and Braden Schneider, that I definitely think could either be great trade pieces or could possibly, of course, also be good long-term pieces for this Rangers squad. There are kind of two options and two sides to this, obviously keeping them or trading them away, but ultimately, I do think these are two players that could be potential, pieces that could get traded away and could end up fetching back a pretty good return. This upcoming free agent class was once supposed to be an absolutely elite one, with guys like Kirill Kaprizov, Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel, Kyle Connor, and of course, many of those players have now signed new deals with their current teams. Obviously, they all signed big extensions, and now the free agent class, which was once going to have multiple, true top-level superstars, is now looking at a couple kind of stars, with guys like Alex Tuch and Nick Schmaltz kind of leading the pack. So obviously, things have dropped off quite a bit. Rangers have a pending UFA with a guy like Artemi Panarin, but with how bad this free agent class is looking, I definitely think guys like Lafreniere and Schneider, who are, of course, on the younger side of things, who I also definitely don't think have kind of hit their, peak development-wise. I mean, obviously, they might not end up kind of taking that next big step in their development with the Rangers, but they could obviously do something like a guy like, Keandre Miller did by leaving this team and end up playing a whole lot better, right? That is definitely a possibility, and I'm sure some teams could possibly see that. So these are players who are still young, who are quite talented, a top 6 caliber forward, a top 4 caliber defenseman, both under team control, of course. You've got Lafreniere, who's locked up on that long-term deal. You've got Schneider, who is an RFA, so he's under control still. So I feel like with how kind of depleted this free agent class has gotten, and with how there doesn't seem to be a bunch of teams kind of, looking to trade players away and kind of being in a selling mode, I feel like the market does kind of seem like it's pretty high right now for selling teams. And if the Rangers are truly shopping a, pretty good young, top 6 caliber forward and top 4 caliber right-handed defenseman who's pretty big and, quite tough, I definitely think could be, some pretty hot commodities on the market. These are two players that, like I said, I think could be great long-term pieces for this Rangers squad, but I think it's quite evident this Rangers team needs to kind of continue with this kind of, retool or reshaping of the roster. And, obviously they are doing good young pieces, but if you can get back a lot of good value and really kind of maximize it, well, maybe that's where it ends up making sense, because a guy like Braden Schneider and Lafreniere, I both kind of feel like have hit kind of a wall right now with their development. And, like I said, I don't think it's necessarily that they're never going to be able to take that next step, but I'm just not quite sure it's going to happen with the Rangers. And that is the exact same scenario that has happened with a guy like Keandre Miller, where I never thought he kind of actually hit his official kind of, development ceiling necessarily with the Rangers, but I just never thought I'd be able to kind of take that next step with the Rangers organization. I always kind of thought that if he went to a team like Carolina and was put in a pretty good, spot there in a good defensive system with, the right defense partner, with the right team, he definitely could be a very, very good player. And obviously he has been, quite good this season. So yes, it might suck that the Rangers ended up trading away a young player who ended up taking, a pretty big step in their game, once they left this team, and especially with it being a division rival, but it's not like the Rangers got worse with this move. They actually got way better, like a whole lot better. You see now this team actually has when Foxy's healthy, of course, a true number one top pair. I mean, this has been one of the best pairs in the entire NHL. Gavrikov has been absolutely amazing. Foxy has been phenomenal on both sides. Even Gavrikov has put up a lot of points. So I think this has just created a true elite top pair for this team. You add on some other good assets there. I mean, a first and second plus a fairly highly rated defense prospect there who's a right-handed guy as well. Adds on a little extra kind of value, and he's, NHL ready pretty much. So I think the Rangers really made out quite good in this trade. And although the Canes may have a, top 4 caliber young defenseman going forward, Anke Andre, who might hurt this team down the road at points in the playoffs, maybe for sure. But ultimately, I think this team got better. They made a good value trade, and they really, just made this team better and put this team in a better spot for not only right now, but going forward as well. Gavrikov is a longer-term piece. He signed a 7-year deal. He should be good for the entirety of that deal, I think. You got a first and second plus a prospect. That's future value as well. So the Rangers got better for right now and for the future with that trade being made, of course. So I think if you can do something like that, where maybe you do ship off a Braden Schneider instead of signing him back to be that third pairing defenseman with a cap hit at about like $6 million possibly, right? Because with the way things are going, Braden Schneider is going to get at least, $5-6 million, right? So I think that's what's going to be the case. And unless you want to pay a third pairing defenseman that, you got to trade him away. So that's why I really do think it can make a lot of sense for this team to go out there and possibly trade away a guy like Braden Schneider, where you can get back some good value. You don't have to go out there and pay him that kind of money. You can definitely find a more than serviceable third pairing right-handed defenseman for a whole lot cheaper than what he'll make on his next contract. And then, whatever else you're getting, you're just adding on top of that. So let's say you sign like a third pairing defenseman for like $2.5-3 million at tops, let's say. You go out there, you're saving $3.5 million or whatever it is in cap. You also get back whatever assets you acquired in that trade, whatever that is, a first round pick or prospects, or maybe more ideally, of course, you're getting a kind of nice young NHL player who is already playing at the NHL level, who is maybe just in more of a position of need for this Rangers team and is in a spot where maybe that specific team doesn't need that position as much. Maybe it's a left-handed defenseman or a winger possibly, and the team is really in need of a righty. That can make a lot of sense. And by no means am I saying I desperately want to see either of these players traded away, but I think with the way they have both kind of really hit their ceiling with this Rangers team, it kind of feels like, I'm not really sure we're going to see either of them take that next step in their development with this organization currently. So I think if you can get back some really good value, and like I said, I feel like this is kind of the time to do it before the deadline or possibly this upcoming offseason, as there are really, a very few amount of kind of star players that even seem to be possibly available via trade. There definitely doesn't seem to be a whole lot of those guys. Even a guy like Jason Robertson now, who was discussed and rumored a bunch in trades in the offseason and earlier on, he's obviously hasn't really had his name involved as much. So I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of guys available via trade, or definitely, of course, via free agency. So if the Rangers are able to figure out the right kind of deal for either of these players, I definitely think it could make some sense for this team. And although they could be good pieces long-term for this squad, ultimately, I do think trading them away could potentially be what's best for this Rangers team, and also possibly for what's best for their development and career going forward as well. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post a video about the New York Rangers every single day at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video. Do you want to see guys like Lafreniere or Schneider possibly traded away? Do you think I'm crazy for even suggesting that? Do you think they would be kind of, some top kind of trade targets for certain teams? Let me know your thoughts. What would you want to see come back in return for either of these players? I'll catch you next one, and bye.